it goes along with what the U.S. government does all the time, which is lying. And I say that after, as you mentioned, being in the U.S. military 29 years, both as a active duty and then in the reserves, and then 16 years as a U.S. diplomat. And I think Matt and I both would agree that our country shades the truth, to put it mildly, all the time. And the revelations of WikiLeaks and Julian Assange on all of these places that both Hamit and Matt have listed, from the Afghan war logs, and I helped reopen the U.S. Embassy in Kabul, Afghanistan, in December of 2001, and was there for about 6 months, and then left for what became my last assignment in the State Department. I was the deputy ambassador in Mongolia, and then I resigned there in March of 2003 in opposition to the war on Iraq. And to see the Afghan war logs and then the Iraq war logs about what was going on behind the scenes was not surprising, because we know what goes on in wars. And the surprising part was that all of a sudden, this became public. Not that the military wanted it public and the State Department didn't want it public, but because of this crazy institution called WikiLeaks. And I can remember in the very beginning thinking, oh my God, this is wild. I mean, look at all of this stuff that's coming out. In the very beginning, as a former U.S. government employee, was like, oh man, this is really going to be something. And then as the newspaper started actually publishing parts of it and reading it, and it was like, oh my God, didn't we learn our lesson? Hell no, we don't learn the lesson of Vietnam, where the same things that were going on in Afghanistan and Iraq, that went on in Vietnam, the same atrocities were going on. And yet it took WikiLeaks, to bring these out to the public in a short amount of time. It didn't take years, as it did in Vietnam, for us as the public to really find out what had gone on there. I remember with a group called Veteran Intelligence Professionals for Sanity, VIPS. I actually was not an intel analyst or anything like that for either the military or the State Department, but because I'd worked so long with the government, I was given honorary status in this intelligence group of professionals who are now retired. And we've made several trips to London to have dinner with Julian in the Ecuadorian embassy. One time was to give him an award from this organization, and another time was to give an award to another whistleblower in the UK. So having dinner with him in that embassy and, talking about in general terms, because we anticipated that the embassy was recording things on its own for its own use. Now we know the CIA had co-opted the Ecuadorian embassy to record Julian and for years. But to be able to just sit back and talk about the importance of what had happened with WikiLeaks was so important for us, and I hope it was important for him too, to know that people around the world, of course, in the very early days were solidly behind him for the reasons that Hamit and Matt have identified, because we really didn't know the full extent of the duplicity and the evilness and the criminality that parts of our government were conducting. And if you want to just see using what's going on in today's world, we have another collateral murder that actually we've got to see in real time, and that's in Gaza. There are 3 vehicles were attacked by the Israeli military with drones firing into these 3 vehicles that the Israeli military knew exactly who they were because they had gotten permission to go on this road. And the drone pilots could certainly see the name of World Food Kitchen on the top of the vehicles. So we actually don't need WikiLeaks now to disclose that, because the media has disclosed it. We still need WikiLeaks, though, for a variety of other things that are going on in Gaza today. I mean, I hope somewhere some investigative groups are able to find the Israeli documents that show the horrible, horrible, evil, genocidal decision-making that the Israeli government has made. And I hope they are held accountable for their criminal acts, whereas U.S. government politicians have never been held accountable for any of the things that they've done in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in Syria. You talk about the need for more information to be known about what is going on in our world today. And groups like WikiLeaks are critical to getting us the information, to the solid information that shows that the U.S. was definitely a part of the coup in Ukraine and the lead up to, in my opinion, entice the Russians to go ahead and attack Ukraine because the U.S. and other Western countries kept pushing Ukraine to join NATO. I mean, there's a whole raft of information that's out there that slowly comes out, but it would sure be nice to have the WikiLeaks with us right now. And then you look at other places in the world where it's so important, as Julian and WikiLeaks found us the information for Afghanistan and Iraq and for Guantanamo. If you look behind the scenes, what has been going on in the Trump administration, where, you know, the outreach, what I thought was about the only positive thing I can say about the Trump administration was reaching out to North Korea and the decision-making behind the actual meeting 3 times with Kim Jong-un, and then all of a sudden, nothing. And the behind the scenes of what went on with that are going to be so enlightening. The behind the scenes of the continued U.S. informal war on Iran, the undeclared war on China. Well, I wouldn't say it's undeclared, but the proxy war the U.S. has with Russia. All of these things and the behind the scenes, the information about the political decision-making of the United States and why it has pursued its policies. And particularly, I think from the latter days of the Obama administration, the Trump administration, and now the Biden administration, there's a lot of secret wheeling and dealing that has been going on that we, the public, need to know. We can make some guesses on some things, but it certainly would be nice to have those messages that WikiLeaks was able to publish. Not that WikiLeaks itself was the one that went after those documents. I mean, they are not the ones that hacked into anything. It's that they provide a platform for people who have been in the government that are offended and horrified by the actions of the government, and they blow the whistle on the U.S. government and on other governments, like through the Panama Files and things like that. Julian, as a publisher, as a journalist, is receiving the worst possible treatment in the world for an honest journalist profession. So it is so important that we support him, that we look at the people that have suffered also, not only Julian, but Chelsea Manning, who went to jail for being a whistleblower, for Daniel Hale that went to jail for being a whistleblower. And they're both out of prison, and Julian still is sitting there as a professional journalist. So I thank everyone for the opportunity to encourage everyone, do what you can to put pressure on our governments to say that there should be no extradition of Julian Assange from the UK to the US, and that he should be immediately released from this imprisonment of decade, wrongful imprisonment for what he has done for the benefit of the world. Thank you.